Working with multiple worksheets and linking data from external sources is certainly nothing new to Excel. What may be new to you, and what certainly is new to the application, are the changes that occurred over the last 3 versions or so. The most obvious, of course, is the introduction of an entirely new user interface known technically as the Fluent interface. The most obvious component was the elimination of menus and toolbars that have been replaced by the ribbon. Of course, there's a lot that can be seen here, but for our purposes, there are basically 3 tabs that are going to be of interest. The first is the Formulas tab. Unlike the common Home, Insert, Review, and View tabs, the Formulas tab is unique to Excel. As we'd expect, it includes many different tools for working with calculations. We'll be working a lot with calculations throughout the series. But of specific interest to us during this particular chapter will be options that we find under the Defined Names group. We'll be reviewing these options in detail in the Simplifying References with Names video. We'll also be discussing something called the Watch window, which can be found more towards the right end of the ribbon in the Calculations group. As the complexity of your worksheets grows, and especially when you link to external data sources, you may even want to modify the way that calculations are handled. We can do this using the Calculation options, which is also found in the Calculation group of the Formulas tab. Linking to external data is covered in the chapter Leveraging Other Data Sources. In the Bringing Data Together chapter, we'll learn to arrange our working Excel environment the way that we want, possibly with multiple windows, and saving the layout so that we can reapply it with just a few clicks. That way it's going to save us time when we want to do the same type of work in the future. This option is actually found under the View tab, which is another tab that is of interest to us. It's all the way at the right side of the ribbon. The third and final tab of specific interest to us is the Data tab. It makes sense that the Data tab is of interest since the focus of this entire series is on linking and consolidating data. On the Data tab, you'll find a Connections group. This is where we'll be able to work with all of the connections that we have when we link data into the current worksheet or the current workbook. As we build worksheets and workbooks that refer to external data, especially, the tools found here will become more and more important. They're specifically discussed in the chapter called Bringing Data Together and Leveraging Other Data Sources. Because for some people the ribbon is new and the whole concept of tabs and groups and options may be new as well, I just wanted to mention that there are these 3 tabs that are of specific interest that we'll refer back to as we work throughout the series. While the ribbon was certainly the most visible change that came about with Excel 2007 and later versions of Office, there are many behind-the-scenes changes that are actually more important as far as the capabilities of Excel go. For example, did you know that the physical size of worksheets is now much larger than it ever was before? While many people don't even use a small fraction of what a single worksheet can hold, the numbers are, I think, interesting to hear and may be important for those of you who do work with large amounts of data, especially if you'll be importing it or linking it from an external data source like a large database or application. Versions of Excel up to and including version 7 had worksheets with a total of 16,384 rows. The next 4 versions of Excel increased that number to 65,536 rows by 256 columns. For those of you who are trying to keep track, that means the very last column in a worksheet was column IV. Since Excel 2007, though, worksheets have grown once again. They can now contain a total of, are you ready for this? 1,048,576 rows by 16,384 columns. This makes the last column label XFD. If you don't believe me, you can try it yourself using F5 to display the go-to box and typing in the cell address. What you type in is XFD 1048576, press enter, and it'll take you to this location on the worksheet. It is the end of a current worksheet in the new format. Now, do you need to memorize all of these statistics? Not at all. I think they're interesting bits of trivia, but more importantly, they do let you know exactly how much space you have on each worksheet. Many of you will never begin to fill up this entire worksheet, but if you have more than that amount of data, that is definitely one reason that you would need to split your data between multiple worksheets. How you do that will depend on the data and the way that you need to work with the data. It might be by location or by expense code, by months, or even fiscal year. If you take a careful look at this particular workbook that we're using, which happens to be from your Chapter 2 Working Files folder, you'll see that there are worksheets that have been split by location. So if this is for a retail store, for example, they have a location in Boise, Boston, Denver, and Seattle. Each one has its own worksheet. Here's a little keyboard shortcut for you. If you want to move quickly between worksheets without having to leave the keyboard to click with the mouse, you can do so by using your Control key and page up or page down. Control page up moves you to the worksheet to the left, and Control page down moves you to the worksheet to the right. This can certainly be a lot faster and easier if you're trying to keep your hands on the keyboard. How you split data among different worksheets will depend on you and your data. With the dramatic increase in worksheet size since Excel 2007, though, being forced to split data simply because it wouldn't fit before is often no longer an issue for most of us. Another difference you may have noticed as you moved from versions including Excel 2003 and prior to those that came with Excel 2007 and later was that the file extension changed. This is another behind-the-scenes modification that's very important and worth mentioning. Just to take a look at it, let's go up to the Backstage by going to File, and we'll just do a quick Save As. We'll bring up the Save As dialog box, and the only reason I'm doing this is to show you that under Save As Type, there are different options. Anytime in Office 2007 and later that you see something that just says Excel Workbook, that's talking about the new file format. It's XML format, and the extension is XLSX. That's opposed to anything that says 97 to 2003. This is the old format. In this case, the file extension would be just XLS with no X at the end. If you want to take full advantage of all of the features that we're talking about, make sure that you're saving things into the newer format. The reason that's important, of course, is more than just a few letter changes. The new versions of Excel, the new format, the XLSX format, is actually more stable. And this becomes much more important when you start working with very large files, and especially files that are linking to other external data sources. In those cases, the stability of the application becomes critical. You don't want Excel to crash in the middle of performing some critical calculations. There's a lot more that could be said about the change in file format, but stability is the primary reason it's important to us in this context. With that, let's go ahead and close out part 1 of this topic. And in our next video, we'll continue on with our worksheet review, talking specifically about those worksheets and tabs that will be so important to us throughout the rest of the series.